Well, all right. Rose.
Yes,
Okay, you just mentioned you had three businesses off camera
do.
or off recording, off
Yes,
all of the things.
all
Well,
the
what
things.
the main one is Retro on Main.
Yes,
That's the main one.
that's the main on the main
Mhm.
street. Yep.
So, well, tell us about that one, why you got it started and why you're proud of it. What's the hard stuff? Like
Oh,
just go off.
okay. Yeah, so my business is Retro on Main, and we're currently, well, it's all cleaned out now, but we were at 828 Main Street. And Saturday is our re-grand opening, so we're going to be at 836 Main Street. So we got to expand in the first 7 months of us
Nice.
opening, which was,
And not too far.
yeah, like it was one of those things. The landlord offered it to me, and it was, I had that moment of, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could pull that off.
Hmm.
And that was very scary. And then it just hit me, if I don't go in there, someone else is, and I'm gonna
Right.
lose that spot. And
Is it a cool spot
it's
or
sick. It has
yeah?
exposed brick. It
Oh yeah.
fits, the vintage vibe. It has a big processing room, and then it has a room for us to meet with the really high dollar buyers that buy our denim or things like that.
Hmm.
And then it has a massive warehouse in the basement. So we got to keep our old warehouse in our old store, and then we are also getting this one just because we have that much inventory.
Right.
So that's where it's located, and I've been doing it 13 years. I was selling all through high school and just really fell in love with it.
Hmm.
And I had a lot of people tell me, get a storefront, get a storefront. I was like, no, like I'm gonna do the booths, like
Right.
antique booths, and it's safe and doing pop-up events. Well, your dad was one of them, and a couple other people were like, just I'm not gonna baby you, like get it going.
Hmm.
And I had a friend who was really helpful, and he just kind of said, this is how you kind of just put your head down and do it. And he goes, I don't need to tell you that, but I agree. And he's
Hmm.
also in this kind of in the vintage industry, and it was like, okay, I think I could do it. And then I just had a moment one day. I was like, no, I'm gonna do it because I need to.
Right.
And it's it's one of the coolest things because you're on Main Street. You get to meet people. You get to hear about everyone's lives and connect with them, and then you get to be a part of all the Main Street stuff, which was so
Right.
important. It was, our options were Main Street or Moscow. That was really how I felt. It was,
Right.
we couldn't, I didn't want to go anywhere else. Um, and having vintage on Main Street is really important because it's the history. That's where all the
Hmm.
historical buildings are. It's where all the history buffs like to go. Out
Right.
of town history buffs like to go, so they you know respect and honor the history clothing that we have in there.
Hmm.
So 13 years, and now we're pushing our eighth month of being open.
Hmm.
It's a lot of work. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, you go to yard sales, and it's like, yeah, I started that way. I started
Yeah.
doing thrifting, yard sales, antique shopping, and you have to. Sometimes it's a gamble. Sometimes you're like, I don't know if I can make money off of this, but
Hmm.
I'm gonna try buy it and then flip it. And it was a lot of that learning. Okay, what happens in the valley does not happen in the rest of the world. So
No.
who am I
Yeah.
selling to? And that was kind of the hard learn, is like, okay, I've been doing pop-up events for so long, but now I'm rolling with some big dogs who
Yeah.
deal this crazy denim, and it's like, oh, so I've only been doing the really crazy denim for about a year.
Hmm.
Which that's a whole nother lion's den. Like
Right.
the boys they're aggressive, and they're out for blood, and
Yeah.
it's hard. Currently I'm the only female denim hunter that's actively hunting denim. There's another girl, her name's Second Baxter on Instagram, and her and I kind of get to play off of each other quite a bit. We'll send each other like, hey, I got this pair of bucklebacks, or I got this bib overalls, and it's kind of fun
Yeah.
to like see another woman like starting it and like killing it too. She's been selling actually since she was, I think, 10. Like
Man.
she was called the Pyrex Princess. Like she just knew
Pirate.
whatever she was doing, and I'm
Yeah.
like, cool. And then she got to clothing. So being the only female really actively doing it is hard because the
Hmm.
guys don't take you seriously at all.
So the guys, they're doing like all the denim, like menswear and women's wear.
Women's wear.
Women's wear. Okay.
Women's wear.
Yeah.
It's a tongue twister,
Yeah.
I know.
It's like
I sometimes I like start to say it, I'm like, no, hold on. Wait,
that
what am
can't
I
be right.
saying? Yeah. So a lot of 20 years and older is vintage.
Hmm.
like people get offended at that, and I'm like, I'm
Right.
sorry, like you're vintage, like not my fault.
That is true.
Yeah, and then 100 years and older is antique.
Hmm.
And so that's how we kind of grade stuff. So when you're going into clothing and you're getting towards that like 50 and then that antique mark of like these bibs or jeans are over 100 years old, you're looking at crazy money because they've survived. And a lot of our, buyers that are that big high dollar buyers they're out of the country. They're out of country buyers. And like Japanese are one of our biggest buyers, and they want the American dream. And,
Right.
they love how Levi's have been made. They love the look of them. They love like FFA jackets. And it's
Mhm.
really random, but they're dealing in these really crazy denim. And I'm just like, I just want to teach people how to wear like vintage stuff and fashion.
Mhm.
And it's like, I got this opportunity because I talked to one of my friends now, but we weren't friends at the time, and we were both stocking our antique booths. And I think it was funny because I think he looked at me, I walked in, I had like bib overalls on, just like, I mean, I looked like this. And
Mhm.
he asked, what I did, and we had that very civil conversation. And he goes, yeah, I pick an old Barnes. And I was like, oh, dude, I want to do that. And him and our other friend like looked at each other, and they're like, okay, you want to go Friday? And I think that they were like trying to get me to be like, oh, no, 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 no. And I was like, yeah, what time? And like, I showed up and I loved it. I've been picking with my family for years.
Mhm.
They used to like rehab houses and, get cloth foot tubs and stained glass in Iowa. And I was like, yeah, like Barnes don't freak me out. And I don't think
Mhm.
that they registered that. And so then they're like, hey, we need to get up, to the top of the barn. Like, who's going to go? And then like they turned around and I was already up there, and they're like, oh, she's serious. So it's kind of that, like, they risk their lives so much for jeans. Like,
Right.
it's so stupid when you say it out loud, but when those jeans are $50,000, why are you not going to risk your life for them?
Correct. Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's really crazy, but
The wood's
yeah,
been standing for a while.
yeah.
No big deal.
I
That
mean,
beam's
knock it, see if it doesn't fall. Like,
pretty sturdy.
just toss the small girl up. It's fine.
Right. Yeah.
That's works out.
Right. So, and then, so you do sell online then, or how are you getting the sales?
So it's crazy because Instagram,
Right.
people don't understand why we pour so much time and money into our social medias.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, that.
Hmm.
Like, people are like, well, why? Well, if you could get someone when they're on their couch at home
Hmm.
and you're in their living room, you've won them over.
Yeah. They want stuff.
They want to sit and be like, oh, I could wear that, or
Mhm.
oh, I want to buy that. And then it's kind of this global network of like, you post something, you kind of post a teaser or a pocket picture or whatever,
Right.
and then the high dollar buyers are like, what is that? Do you have pictures? Like, can I see it? And that like
Mhm.
builds this frenzy. And so having that, kind of like tool, that's the main thing. Usually it's just networking, figuring out, talking to other buyers, talking to other sellers, being like, I have this. Who do you have? Like, how can
Mhm.
we do this connection? And that's why my team and I, we pay for leads, we pay for hookups, like we pay for everything because we try to make sure that each person is fair and even,
Mhm.
because it gets us into everyone else's
Right.
everyone else's business, everyone else's wallets. Like, that's how this works. And so
Right.
Instagram is actually the main kind of way. We're starting a Depop for the store, which is a vintage selling app. I had one for years and ran it, and that's another reason that I started out so young. Is it was like, I could sell, like I could post
Right.
those in my room and then ship it. Like, that's
Mhm.
perfect. Like, whatever. And
Yeah.
so getting to learn that, and so we're gonna bring it into the store now. We've had a lot of questions about website, and we're looking into it. So we might do a website
Mhm.
in the
You think that
future.
would be difficult when you're doing things that are vintage and it might just be a one-off where you have to list that product and pretty much delist it
Yeah.
right after you sell it because it's not like
Yes.
a stocking item like a typical
Yeah.
web store would be.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stores even in our own valley. And I talked to, Storm Cellar quite a bit
Mhm.
about this and like the similarities, because they do, they buy outright too, which is, I don't do consignment. A lot of people get confused. They're like, oh, well, I'll consign my clothes. No, I don't like consignment because I feel like you're kind of getting cheated. I'm kind of getting cheated. And then I have to make sure your stuff is perfect and then return all of it. Like, it's really
Yeah.
hard. I just want to buy it and pay you cash. So then you get a good chunk of change and you're good. And then if I lose profit, it's on me. It's
Right.
not on you. And so him and I, or Caleb and Lydia at the Storm Cellar will talk about that, like what's the similarities? Why does this like work like this? And that is a big struggle. There's one thing,
Right.
and it's one size, and I'm sorry. Like I can't argue with that. I can't make it better. We have a great seamstress and she'll do whatever she can, but it's one of those things. That's why vintage is so cool, is once you find those jeans that fit, you're never going to want to take them off. Like
Right.
I've had girls come in, they're like, I wore these for 2 weeks straight. Like, how do I wash them? And I'm like, okay, we're going to have that conversation now. 'Cause you see it. As a society, we've gone into like the stretchy jeans and they just don't
I
last.
don't like them.
No, they're
They
awful.
change size as you wash them.
Yes.
And I'm like, these look good when I bought them, but I don't know what's going on now, because whatever the elastic stuff is doesn't stay the same size.
The polyester is just not doing it. Yeah, the jeans, that's why the 501s are so iconic, is because they're 100% cotton, for a really long time. Late 80s is when they switched, late 80s, that they weren't US made. Like that's a big run for a lot of them. A lot of other businesses in fast fashion, they changed into outsourcing.
Right.
But where they were such good quality, the only thing that happens is you just continue to break them in. But that's why we like denim, is if you look at old denim, it's like, oh, he was obviously a farmer. Oh, he worked on cars. That rip is right there. And you start mapping out, the whiskering, the honeycombing, the match strikes, and you could tell someone's story from jeans. But not only that, they're just better made. And so having the newer stuff, sometimes it's like, oh, why did I put this on today? Like it just doesn't stay, or it doesn't look good, or after like 2 hours it's stretched out and it just doesn't work.
And you get the ads for them constantly. Like, this is the perfect jean. And I'm like, I'm not gonna do that again.
No. I tried it once, not gonna do it again. Yeah.
It didn't work. I mean, kind of miss Macy's had the black 501s for a long time. But the reason I stopped shopping there was the 67 questions at checkout. It took 30 minutes to buy a pair of jeans or a shirt.
Well, tell me your size. We have a bunch in the back, all black.
I think it's like 33, 32s or something.
Okay, we'll write it down.
Yeah.
I have a book of everyone who wants stuff.
Oh, that's pretty well.
But yeah, having those unique things is hard for a website. It is. And maintaining that Depop account was good when it was just me. And, some of my vendors know, like, okay, I will bring your stuff in because you're my friend, and you could look at me dead in the eye and be like, you're not doing your job. Like, we could have those really real conversations, but I'm not pulling in a vendor that I don't trust to sell their stuff. So it is going to be my stuff. But the high dollar, the really crazy denim, you don't want anyone to see. You let it be that secret. You let it be, you only release it to a couple buyers. And we have buyers that message us, weekly, daily, saying, what do you have? What did you find? I know you went picking. I saw, and they get this, like, I need to be the first one to see it. Even if they pass, they want to be the first one to see it. And knowledge is power. And these things are really crazy. So having that kind of hidden is how that works. But the everyday, we call them mids, lows and mids. So anything like $500 and under, or $200 and under is a mid. And so that's how we gauge that. That's what will be up on the website. That's the everyday vintage that is getting sold in the shop. Of course, if you want red lines or crazy buckleback, message me. But that's not, I'm not going to put, something that's 20 grand up on a website, because there's no point. But taking the time to put it up, take it down, measure it, it's just like never ending. So that's why I haven't just done it. It's a lot of thought.
Are there like holy grail items that, like, oh man, I found this, that would just blow people's minds? Or what would that be?
So I recently was in a barn in Montana, and it was really sweet. This little old lady was just, we get this feeling, and we call it the feeling, because you just know that there's something in there. And we were cold calling, and cold calling is when you just knock on doors and you pray to God that they'll let you go through their barn. That's really it. And we make a rule that we don't cold call alone. Everyone's safe. This is what we do. And we have all these picking rules just because we're all freelance in this group. But if you have a group and you work together, you're more successful. So we do these cold calls, and we were cold calling in Montana. And I like to credit that I have a great memory, which is such a lie because of ADHD, but I misplaced my truck. And that's how we found this house. So I'm just going to give props to my truck for, I think it drove away. It wasn't my fault. But we happened to go across this house and this lady wasn't answering. And this is why connections are so important, is we called a local person. We're like, hey, who lives in this house? Like, this is abandoned, but who's next door? Like, and she's like, oh, I got you. So she got us in the next day and the lady's like, oh, there's no clothes in there, but you could look. And, you know, she was just this nice old lady. And she took us around to the back and she goes, this is my house. It was one of the first 3 houses built in this town, which is crazy anyway. And she's like, you're going to have to put a shoulder through that door because I haven't been in there since my son passed away. And she's like, let the big guy do it. And she heard a crash and a bang because I was not going to let the big guy do it. I wanted to do it. And she's like, oh, keep her, you know. And she was kind of shocked. And I swung the door open. There's a pile of clothes. And I looked at her. I was like, lady, you lied to me. Like, there's clothes in here. She's like, oh, well, have at it. And we're like, can we get into the attic? Can we get into crawl spaces? She goes, this house is getting dozed. And both of us were like, why? It's like the original. We're like, okay, we're not even getting into that because that's hard. Because it's like, oh, that's history, though. Right. Like, first 3 houses built, but she has her plans for it. But she's like, yeah, go ahead, like, knock yourselves out. And she kept coming back like every hour, every 30 minutes, like, hey, I'm just watching Jeopardy, but are you guys okay? Didn't know if you left. And she's like, here's, you know, cookies, here's water, here's whatever. And so we knew when we walked in, we looked up and the kitchen is just falling apart. And we looked up and we both kind of like grabbed each other. We're like, that's clothing. Like, that is fabric. But we couldn't figure out where the access point was. So we did the whole loop, did an hour. We found one access point. We found some cool stuff. Nothing really crazy. But we start kind of getting defeated and walked down the door. And my picking partner, Jordan, he looked up and he's like, there's the door. Like, but we couldn't get to it. And so he had to hold on to the door of the attic and tippy toe. And I had to shimmy up him into the attic. So we were picking in there and I was just kind of handing stuff to him and he pulled out these old trousers and he's like, these are weird. I was like, I don't know what they are. Like, I'm just trying to get it all out. And he goes, whoa, these say Levi Strauss, which is, of course, one of the biggest brands that we all try to hunt for. And he's like, I don't know what these are. Like, I'm Idaho jeans and I don't know these. I was like, okay, cool. Weird. Put them aside. Just keep going. And then I pull out a pair of Carhartt bib overalls. And Carhartt is very interesting because we all know the like logo now. It's very clean. It's very like modern. But the original logo was a trolley car. That's where it came from. And it had cursive Carhartt through it with a heart around it. And some of them just say Carhartt with a heart around them. Those are really old. And they have heart buttons. And that's when like you're like dealing with some big money because heart buttons stopped. Like, they didn't do it for very long because it took more time, you know, like, and they were all printed with that logo. So I pull out these bibs and I just like, I thought I was going to pass out. I have my mask on and I have like my gloves on, all my safety stuff. And I just am like sitting there. I'm like, I don't even know, like, pinch me, like, this cannot be real. And I hand it to him and he's just like sitting on the stairs and he's like, yeah, I need to sit down. Like, this is weird. Because it's once you find those heart buttons, you're like, oh my gosh, we're getting into like the $50,000 range of things. And so we found those and we did some digging and we're thinking they're like 100-something years old, which is insane. And so that was one of kind of those monumental finds for me. There's brands that people hunt for. So like Levi, Headlight, like there's a bunch of brands. But the trousers that got found in that house were so weird. So we reached out to the archivist at Levi's and we're like, hey, Tracy, you know what are these?
What do we have here?
And it was kind of interesting because she was so sweet and she's like, oh, we only buy Levi's, like, thank you. And then I was like, no, they are. Like, she goes, well, I don't know what they are. And I'm like, you get paid for that. Like, I was leaning on you. And so Levi's actually purchased them from me, which is
that's wild.
Yeah. And it's like my denim dealers never had that. And he's like, you have got to be proud of that. And I'm like, I don't know, like, I feel weird, you know? So she did an interview and it's gonna come out, I think, early next year. But yeah, it's kind of crazy, the finds, you know, people kind of all have their own thing. Like Jordan loves Black Bear, the brand Black Bear, and sounds like a common brand, but it's harder to find. But it's all in that like workwear category of that older stuff where people really worked busted their ass and got work done, and you could see it in their clothing. But some people like the weird shaped pockets, and so like you kind of have a buyer for everything.
Right.
And that's kind of the way that you feed someone else's addiction when you find it, because if you're not into it or you don't want to archive, we archive so much, and people don't they don't get that. They're like, oh, you're just flipping it. No, we archive a lot, and our goal is to open a museum. I have a wall in the current shop, and I had a section in the old shop that was all museum, and that's our goal.
So do you keep stuff and just keep it, not instead of selling it?
Yeah, and it's sometimes it's hard. Like you're like, oh, that's like 20 grand, but we're like the story's more important. And I've always tried to be like, money's not important. And I think it sometimes irritates Jordan because I'm like, it's fine. Like, it's money's, I don't care. Like, I have food on my table. I could go to groundwork. Like, we're fine.
Yeah, right.
But it's like, I don't know. I just never want to be fueled by money. I think that it's a really hard look. And it in business, it's hard to be like, oh, I only want money. No, I want to hear your story, and I want to hear what your grandpa did in like World War II. Well,
sometimes to compensate those things, you can do like a video on that might make you a little bit of money. It might not make you as much as you could have sold it, but it like a lot of people like the interesting stuff.
Oh, they do.
Like it's kind of weird. My grandmother passed away recently, and I got a little TV. I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Oh my gosh.
It's just like one of those travel ones, like
the little RV ones. Right. Yes.
And I looked it up to like look about it, and it was like worth $200, and not much, but I was like, but why is it worth $200?
Yeah.
I guess all the CRT TVs are just dying, and there's nobody that can manufacture them anymore. Yeah. So they're going for big bucks now too. Especially they'll probably go for more and more as they die off. Yeah. Supposedly the old school video games don't look the same on new TVs. I was like, that's probably a good point.
That makes sense.
But, so when you get an item, how is the community on, like, how difficult is it to find the right person to buy the items? Is it are there just collectors like you that would, cut a check, or is there like people that are just like high-end fashion wear? I need these for my closet, or how does that go for you?
It's not usually hard for Idaho Jeans. Like, he's been doing this 5 years, and he has some pretty crazy connections. It's harder for me because one, I'm a woman, and so sometimes they're like, I don't know if I want to buy from you. Like,
oh, I see. Yeah,
like that's just how it is. And then the other thing is I'm new to the denim world, so it's like, is she credible? Like, because people like they ship these things to other countries,
right?
And insurance on packages is very important for us. Like, it's scary.
And it doesn't cover a ton most of the time.
No, like it does not at all. So we are very careful. Usually we'll try to like fly it out or to like do a meetup, but it's harder than people think from the outside world. But if you're in this world, you're all working together in a sense of like, hey, I want this, like, keep your eye out for it. So it's kind of that I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. Like, you're looking for Black Bear, I want like Levi's, so like let's figure it out. So when I find some, I'm gonna reach out to you first. And it's a lot of knowing your competitors, and I hate that word because I always feel like they're my networking people, they're not competitors. Right. I don't ever want to see anyone as a competitor, because if you're doing your business right, no one is.
Right.
Like, I just feel that way. And I feel like everyone should be helping and an asset. Like, one of my biggest questions is it hard having, Storm Cellar right across the street? No, because you're going to go shop there for a shirt, and you're going to come shop for me for jeans.
Right.
You're in the shopping mode. They benefit me, and I want them to stay. I will send you over there every day. Like, that is great, because money's staying local, and you are shopping here, supporting two families. Right. I'm never going to question that. And that goes to the larger scale of business. Like, yes, they find something before I do, but I'm not going to go all the way to Nebraska as fast as they could, and they had the lead, so I have no right to that anyway. And our team doesn't loot. That's a huge thing in our community. Not our community here, but like the vintage community, they'll go in and break in houses and take what they want, and our team is like, if if anyone does that on our team, you're out. Because like that's not, we have a huge ethical reason why we don't. And then plus it's just rude. Like it's not yours. You don't, you're not getting the story then. And like, what if it was there for a reason? Like you don't know. And so it's a lot of knowing what people want and just networking. So yes, sometimes it's hard because sometimes people just don't want the stuff. But we haven't really run into that yet. There's some things that it's like, okay, good. Cause I kind of wanted to keep it, you know, it's like more what you wanted. But yeah, the archiving side is really fun because you get to archive all those stories and save them. So
have you ever like let it slip like on a picking mission? Like, oh man,
I love how you say picking mission. Like that just sounds so cool. I'm gonna use that
on a picking mission.
Sorry, go ahead.
But have you ever let it slip? Like, oh goodness, like right in front of the owners, like that this could be worth something or anything like that, where they're like, oh wait, hold on.
Yeah. There's some things that you don't say, but something that I absolutely love and admire about Jordan is he's like, no, we're honest. So if it's 10 grand, we're paying him 5.
Right.
That's what we do. And people ask us all the time, how much is that worth? This is what we think we could sell it for. This is how much you want. Oh, honey, you don't have to give me that. No, we do. There's a reason why your grandpa left it to you. There's a reason why he fought in the war. There's a reason. Save your family farm. Buy a new car. Go to Hawaii, do whatever, but we pay fairly because it's fair. And so, yes, there's sometimes that like I'll say something. I'm like, oh, how much do you think? Is that you know, when I was learning, like, is that, and I'm always learning, but is that 20 grand or what? And Jordan's like, no, this is like $500, like chill. And I'm like, dang it. Like, okay, cool. I'm off, you know? And so I sometimes will let stuff slip, but it's not, for us, it's not that crazy because we try to respect what we're buying and we try to respect the people. So we are pretty honest with how much we think we could sell it for, but there's always that buffer room of if it doesn't. So we'll, you know, I paid a lady $5,000 last week for one Carhartt jacket. One. Like it's a hard thing to like, here you go, here it is. But you know that the payoff's going to be good. And you're also paying for leads because they are going to go talk to their friends and say, hey, I think this is in a barn.
People of the same age, you know, they might have something cool. Like, remember that sweet jacket you had that one time?
I tell Jordan, I'm like, we should just go sit in on like bingo or something. Like, we need to get to these old people's like lives. Like, what are they doing? Do we go to bingo shuffleboard? Like, what do we need to pick up to start talking to old people?
Here's a random brainstorm idea. You film you kind of appraise it, and then you go back to where you picked it. I'll shoot like
you don't show your picking locations.
Oh well, we'll keep it obscure, like the side of a barn.
Perfect.
Like that's all you get.
Okay.
And then we'll like just give them like
the teaser,
interview it, like get the story behind the item, like who owned it, who bought it, where they bought it, and then you can have like, what was that show where they had the
American Pickers,
Antique Roadshow?
Yeah, those. Yes.
The American Pickers.
Yep, you bring something and they tell you about it and they appraise it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's very interesting, the history of a lot of stuff. You know, a big one is like smelter clothing, you know, out of Montana, mining jeans. It's just those things that are
industrial.
Yeah, and it's that like heart of what America was. And it's hard because we were talking to someone in an area in Butte and they're like, there's a building, a very iconic building, and they're like, it's, you know, so many people drive through and they're like, we're so proud that that's there. And they're like, you see that as something great. We see it that took my dad, my grandpa, my brother. They died in the mine and they got drug out, so it wasn't, you know, they didn't get in trouble. And they look at that every day and they're like, to us, that's the Holocaust. And when they said that, it was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, you don't put that together because we weren't living it. And this whole, you know, there's arsenic poisoning, and you know, first house we didn't have masks on, and then we both realized probably should because we don't want to die. But you know, it's that side of it that there's dark history that we've all forgotten, but there's local dark history that no one knows about, and there's such dark history in the LC Valley, and people don't.
Over here.
Yeah, people don't talk about it, like the underground tunnels, why we had those different like minority groups that worked here. Like, we need to respect that history, but instead we just cover it up. And that's really hard for like historians like myself. It's like, but why? Like, it's the damage is done, write it now. Like, honor it. Give them, you know, their time to be like, they worked hard and they worked hard for us. And we didn't show them, you know, sorry, it was your great grandfather, but they didn't show them the respect. But as a society, we need to do that. And so going into some of the spots, it's sometimes hard because you're like, oh, that's such a hard story. And I'm so grateful that I get to buy this from you. So hopefully the sting isn't so bad when you look at it. But it's important to get the story because that's why the piece is here. That's why it didn't get worn, because he wore it to church instead of he was supposed to be wearing it at work. Like, there's those little stories that are so important to find out.
Right. Well, if you want to do one of those videos, I can just
that'd be awesome.
This out, and you can kind of, or you can just like even on your display items for the museum, you can even do stuff like that.
That'd be good. Yeah. We need to do that. We have some really cool ones. We're thinking they're 30s or 40s paperboy outfits from the Lewiston Tribune.
Oh, that's wild.
Old. Yeah. And someone local wanted to buy him, and he's like, how much? And I was like, well, what's your offer? Because I was trying to be respectful. And he's like, oh, like $5. I was like, okay, I could sell these for like $3,000 each. And he just looked at me. He's like, they say Lewiston, Idaho. That doesn't matter to a buyer. It's the fact that it lasted. You know, great, Lewiston, Idaho, whatever. But like the sweatshirt is sick. Like it's that lasted that long. So to a person, like, local stuff kind of matters, but not if it's old. Right. You know, and so it's funny to see how people, they think that something isn't valuable, but it is. And so kind of showcasing that would be really cool.
And stories like that help sell an item too. Yeah. Like they can tell people, oh, this is from this time. Paperboys wore this. Yeah. Like blah, 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 whatever the cool story is. The cool story kind of helps sell an item.
Oh, for sure.
We have just kind of builds intrigue in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, and a lot of people like local history. We have a display right now, and it's a World War II display. It's out of Montana, and he passed away 40-50 years ago, and the family cleaned out the house. All his uniforms were in there. They didn't even clean out the house. They actually just removed the body and all kind of went on their merry way. But the house was, I believe, going to get dozed soon, and so we got permission to go in it. And Jordan was with another member of the team, and he called me and he's like, can we bring this and display it in the shop? And like, I was like, well, sure. Like, I don't really know much about it, you know? And I was like, but let me see when it's here. And I was like, but grab every piece of paper. And he's like, I don't want to bring a bunch of paper back. I'm like, you know me, I like making displays out of paper, but if there's any sort of, you know, stuff there, I want to be able to see it. And so he brought it back, and he like pulled up, and it was just, he like opened the first box, and him and I just like lost it. And it's like hard for me now because it's like, he fought for our country. His brother fought for our country, and he died, and someone just shut the door. And they're walking over his uniforms. There was looters that went through, and they don't care. And so we have his enlistment papers, his letters to and from his brother on the ship. We have the life insurance policy that his dad took out the day after his enlistment papers. Like, that's hard. We have a lot of his, badges and awards, and pictures of all the girlfriends that he apparently had, sending him pictures of them, before he left. We have almost every piece of his uniform, like including the towels that they would use. Like, it's so random. And he's kind of become like the mascot of our shop in a way. Cause it's like, his name was Gerald Kelly. And like every morning I'm like, hey Gerald, like, how are you? Like, I don't know. It's just cool to have that in the shop and see the history of it. But, we've had big buyers come and be like, I want that sweatshirt. I'll give you $50,000 for it. We're like, no, that's a whole display. And that's our display. And the history means something, but knowing that someone just shut the door on it is really hard. But it's very moving when you listen to it. Right. And when I direct people to it, sometimes they overlook it, but I was like, just really read, like when you read that enlistment papers and then you see the life insurance, it's like you're putting a price tag on your kid who was going and fighting. Like, that's insane. And, we have the receipt for his coffin. Like, we have everything. And it's all one person. And it was really creepy. We were driving back from Montana and we get this call and it said Gerald Francis Kelly. And both of us were like, whoa. I was like, pull over. Like, I don't know what this like prank is. I don't know what ghost found your number, but like, this is not okay. And we were both fighting. Like, you answer it. And then we finally answered it. And this voice comes on and he goes, hey, I heard heard you have my great uncle's stuff in your shop. And we're like, dude, start with like, I'm not, a ghost. Like, do something.
Holy smokes.
But yeah, it was nerve wracking. And he's like, I'd love to come up and see it. I have a couple more of his items I was able to save. And he gave me what appears to be one of the great whatever grandparents' wedding rings. So I have their wedding ring. It's from the 1900s and it's stamped on the inside with their wedding date. And so I'm actually going to get it tattooed on my finger, but it's that history side. And we love that history side because it's where we came from. And we're sending kids to war. Like, it's not an easy subject. And it actually opened some doors. I reached out to the American war fighters who help veterans through like suicide or suicide thoughts, and so they help, protect them and make sure that they have people to talk to. And I reached out to them and I said, I just want to put a station in my shop next to this so people could come and write letters. Letters to people active, letters to veterans. And I'll send them out. Like, I just want local people involved in this because this guy fought and he knows like what it was like to just have the door shut and forgotten. Like, what we could tell wasn't, had a lot of family around, but that just kind of hits home. It's like they just shut the door and forgot. And it's like, we do that to people who are alive. We do that to our veterans now. And that's sickening. So trying to get them involved to kind of make a difference has been cool. So we give props to Gerald because we think that he's still doing stuff, but yeah, it's pretty cool. And then when family comes in, it's like, I have more. It's like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, this is so cool. So it's fun to talk to people and take the time.
That is really cool. Yeah, it's kind of always interesting. So Gerald, he had kids or?
I don't actually know how his like life that way was, just because I've done so much research on like his time in the military, and then we've been talking to obviously his great nephew, but his history of like the map through his history in the service was pretty crazy. And they have, the letters from the ship, if you take time and read them, it's crazy. It's like, this bomb hit this, country and like, we're finally free. And like, you could feel the disdain, but I don't know much about his life just because we haven't gotten that information. But yeah, it's hard to not think. It's like, man, where is everybody?
There's genealogical societies that they do all the family lineage and stuff like that, or bought a house, or whatever that kind of thing is. They kind of do a lot of that. You might be able to reach out and get just some. They might just compile some stuff and send it to you. Yeah,
it's kind of crazy the resources that we just have. Like, I mean, people do that, Ancestry.com or anything, and sometimes you find out things you didn't want to find out. But it's cool because it's like, man, if we could find different things out for different veterans and get them somebody. Like, some of them had kids in other countries or had kids here that they never knew about because they were at port and then they left. Like, they don't know. And so it's like they've been living alone for 20 years and then it's like, I have a daughter, or and it's like that there's a support system, and I've only heard of one story that it didn't turn out very well, and like most of them are like, oh my gosh, no, like, you're my dad, like you've answered problems or questions that I've had. So it's fun to kind of follow the rabbit trails of these.
I found some crazy ones online once where like it was like infidelity stories.
Oh my gosh,
I was like, man, this is gonna be good. And so I read them, and like all kinds of people were finding out their neighbor's the real dad, or
it's the milkman. Yeah, like, great.
Or I guess during the 60s it was just a problem with baby swapping at hospitals.
Yes.
And it was like an insane amount of them, like where they weren't adopted. Their parents weren't their parents.
Yes.
So it's like,
I have a friend, and she was telling me about that, and props to her, because the doctor actually used stuff that was his, and so the doctor himself had like all these babies.
That's wild.
Weird. And she had this bright idea. She's like, reached out to all of them, and she's like, let's go to a cabin in the woods. No. Like, you don't know these people? Like, she keeps saying, they're my siblings. I'm like, text me when you get home.
Don't know them.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, cool. And she's like, it was great. Like, we all got along. I was like, oh. She goes, we got along like siblings. I'm like, you're so bold. Like, cool.
So you yelled at each other.
Yeah, like, I would go into the woods with a bunch of people that you don't really know.
Right.
that's scary. But yeah, I've heard crazy stories. And sometimes when we're doing this, we dig up stuff and we're like, do we tell them? Like, what is this? That's not her husband. Like, that's a different wedding album. Why is it in the attic? Like, where is, and so you're like, okay, I'm not here to be Dr. Phil. Like,
those things.
Yeah. I'm like, you might want to hide that when we leave. Like, it's crazy.
So is there anything that's like especially difficult about this job that makes you kind of proud of it? Like, that you kind of like tell family members like, damn, this is really hard, but I'm glad we can do this and we get through it? Or...
Yeah. A lot of it is just like the picking, it's, we get calls at like 6:00 at night and it's like, okay, get in there. It doesn't matter. Get in there. And so we'll drive up and we'll pick till midnight, 1 a.m. in barns and houses. And then we might get a call the next day. And so we have to be up at 3 a.m. to go to another one. And you have to be that on top of it because you'll lose it. They'll go on vacation. They'll forget. They'll lose your number. You just don't.
Right.
You have to take
stay
it.
in the forefront of their brain.
Yeah. And thank goodness Jordan and I both have severe ADHD. So we like don't sleep anyway. And like, we're like, oh, Red Bull, like, let's just go. And so it works. I mean, he doesn't, he's old. Just kidding. That's our joke. We call him Grandpa. But we do, just have to be on top of it. So it's like the crazy demanding schedule. Like I'm building out my shop right now. I've had more people sell to me in the last week than I think not my whole time being open, but like, a month of my other opening. And it just is like, why are you guys all doing, but I can't like turn you down because like you might have a crazy pair of bucklebacks, like that would pay for a year of rent. Like and so it's a lot of that, taking the time and just being like, okay, you're always on your phone. It's really hard. There's times that like, it's like, no, I'm sorry, we're going on a pick. Like I'm missing a family thing. But like the stress of the pettiness in the field, that's really hard. So like mental health wise, it's like we both are like, okay, fine, like you don't like us, but like it's really hard to just be like, why, like just get along. And so it's hard to be like, networking so much, and then it's like, okay, but some people who you think would be like, oh yeah, great, they're like, no, I just don't want to work with you because you're like, you're doing it better, or like and it's like, but I don't know. Or like, they're like, oh, but you came into our state. There's weird things. So sometimes it's just like the puppy dog of like information or state. So sometimes that's hard. But it's just like the demand. Like I go through, holes that are barely big enough for me to fit in, and I'm getting into floorboards, and I could get cut. I could get arsenic poisoning. One of our members of our team got hantavirus.
Oh, Lord. And
it was like, okay, that's nice. Like who's going on the next pick? And but my biggest struggle is just being a female in it. We show up to houses. I mean, we picked in like 3 feet of snow, and we're hauling all this stuff out, and it's so much, and our boots rip, and like then we're up soggy shoes, and so it's just like environmental stuff is always hard. But like we roll up a lot of times, and they're like, all right, pretty lady, and sometimes they're like mountain men, they're like, come on, pretty lady, you could sit inside with me, and I'm like, no,
I'm getting in there.
Yeah, I'm like, and it's so frustrating for me because I'm like, no, like I didn't drive 4 hours to not go, like, and they don't
need hot cocoa right
now.
now.
And they don't get it. And so like the boys for a while, like when we first started, they were like, oh no, we need her, like no, she's important, like, and they really were trying to be like, no, she's small, she, and they're like, oh no, she's the boss, or because I am the boss, I have the store, they're all vendors, or they're all just like people who pick with us. But it's like they were just kind of like trying to protect me. And then now as time has gone by, they're like, yeah, we're just gonna wait for you to put them in their place because it's kind of funny. And I'm like, cool, that works. Right. But a lot of it is that, and it's like, wait, you're gonna do that? And like a lot of women are like, oh, that's gross, and they kind of judge me. And then I'll pull out stuff and they're like, I'm sorry, that was actually pretty cool, like that was badass. And I'm like, see, like you get it now. So like the double standard of just being a female, and I'm tiny, like I'm 5'2", so people are not expecting me to haul, big bags or, huge things. And I always like to, I'm competitive, so I always like to show up the boys anyway. Like
I'm gonna do more.
Yeah. And my mom said when I was little, she's like, because I was homeschooled for a certain amount of time, and my mom was like, I remember you were doing you were doing a girls thing, and you were hanging out with the girls, and you looked at your friend and you're like, I'm gonna go play with the boys because they're more fun and they have less drama. And like I walked away, and my mom's like, oh, yeah, she's my tomboy. Like this is how it's gonna be. And so that's how I've always been. It's like, you know, it's fun because you get competitive with what you find, but it's, for me, like the pick is the most important thing. Like I don't care about the money. It helps. It's great. It will keep my business open. Like great. I want the story and I want the experience. And so that is always hard to get people to understand. They're like, oh, so did you sell that yet? Did you ask me about the pick? Like that's more what I want to talk about. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. We've gotten into some weird situations that are pretty gnarly too. And it's just like, great. Like that's fun.
Well, I think if you had like GoPros attached to you or something,
I say that all the time.
People would really love it because, you know, one evening, this is quite a while ago, I just found out that people like tied off these big magnets.
Oh, magnet fishing.
Them in the
river.
I was like, son of a bitch. What are they going to pull up? So I was like,
oh, it's
I
so
just
cool.
watched that for like a whole evening one night. And
yes.
I was like, it's pretty cool. They're pulling up like Civil War pistols.
Yes.
I was like, what in the world is going on?
I love watching his YouTube is called The Almighty, and he is a diver, and he has like The Almighty, Jiggy with Jordan, and Yappy Twan Twan, and they're like this group, and I loved their dynamic of their group. And I said when we started our group, I was like, this is a dynamic I want, so everyone watch this and like do your homework because like they're funny, but they, you know, they support each other, but they will say, dude, knock it off. And like, that's what we need. But they're doing these diving things, and they, you know, like have their knives, and they're like cutting, and they're putting everything, they're picking up trash. Like they're being, you know, all good with that. So like, it's really cool to watch. But they started doing the magnet fishing. They're like pulling up safes and guns and, you know, whatever. And you're like, okay, what was that involved in? Like, why is that there? Like, don't stop the video. Like, find out who killed somebody. Like, get to it. So it's, those are addicting.
Murder pistols.
Yes. And it's like addicting. You're like, oh, I'm 4 episodes in on YouTube. Like, what is happening? Yeah, it's addicting.
Yeah, it's just like, what's it gonna be this time? And they just pull up a boot. And you're like, oh.
You're like, great.
Come on, next
episode. Yeah, sometimes we'll open stuff and it's like, oh, there's money. For a while, it was like, get the stuff, get in, get out. And just because it was like really cold or whatever. And the boys would always kind of catch me. I was like digging in all the pockets, and they're like, why are you doing that? I'm like, if there's $20 in there, it belongs to him. It doesn't belong to us. And like, so if I find something and we're at the pick, or even if I find something after, I get it back to the family.
Right.
Like I've had people show up with like 10 grand and stuff. And
probably like, a good idea, because a lot of the people that grew up during the Great Depression, they wouldn't put their money in banks.
Everything.
My great grandma had like $100 grand in her closet.
Okay,
and she was like using whipped cream, like
that's
not
great.
Tupperware, but like the plastic for bowls, and you know, just frugal as hell. And so the $100 grand in the closet could have helped. I don't know.
My grandma did the mattress.
Oh, man.
And when all the kids started fighting over the farm, that got put in the bonfire.
Oh, Lord.
So I always explain to people, check your family. Like, get them to tell somebody.
Right. Tell the trustworthy person that would split it up, you know.
And I've had, we've been picking, and they're like, yeah, do you know where my dad hid stuff? In our farm equipment. And like they would hide $100 grand, you know, here or there, and this thing, that thing, and I'm like, okay, so we're also kind of looking for money. They're like, well, we don't know, like it could all be gone. Like, okay, cool. So it's kind of interesting to see where people hid stuff. Like we always look in cereal boxes. We always look in like, you know, the oatmeal containers. It's like, what is in here? Because you never know, especially if it's in a really old house and it's just been abandoned. It's like, okay, so they're just gone. So
kind of curious, why is this oatmeal box here?
Yes,
you know?
And so you look at those things because they hid stuff. They didn't trust banks. Like, no. It's like that's how they protect
they all
themselves.
Got burned by banks, you know, like your money's gone.
Yeah,
all right.
Okay, I couldn't. Could you imagine that though? Like just being like, terrible. Okay, bye.
I mean, I only have $6, but
same.
If it did happen, I couldn't buy a sandwich.
You have double what I.
Yeah, oh, son of a bitch.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's crazy to watch family and how their dynamics work, and they're like, why? And it's like, imagine having nothing. And then the one thing that you had secure was gone. That's why. That's why. Or they have dementia now and they've hit it. Like they don't know.
Cash the check. throw it in the pocket. Yeah.
But we always do that. I now tell my team, I'm like, we're digging for this stuff because it's respectful to return it. So I've heard some really crazy stories of people finding, stuff. I've been at Goodwill and found money in like a purse or something and that I've bought and it's like, okay, that doesn't go back. But if I made a rule with myself, if I find money at a charity place or at a yard sale, that goes into a fund to either go back to charity in like a charity I want to do, or it goes to a family in need. And so I've always kind of done that because it wasn't my money to begin with. And that's just, I try to, maybe a little bit of karma, I don't know what it is, but I try to do it that way because it's like I was meant to find it, but like it wasn't mine. So let's put it for its intended purposes. If it was in a thrift store or something, that goes back. So
I haven't been to the thrift store in a while.
It's kind of surprising. Ours are pretty good here. And I went to massage therapy school in Chicago, and it was like, dang, they're selling like Chanel for like $10. Like, what is that? And it was, I checked for bootlegs, I checked for counterfeits, and it was like, no, this is real. Like, I go get them appraised, and it's like, these people, like, they just don't get it. And you get here, and everyone's like, yeah, Carhartt. I'm like, right? Like, we're in Lewiston, Idaho. We were looking for Carhartts.
Well, it's small towns like Lewiston. I feel like we're not super small, but there's also sneaky money in town. Yeah. There's like people who just, they don't look like they have money, but they got sneaky money, and they might just,
Yeah. I talk about that a lot, that it's like a lot of the big names in our valley totally have a right to have a big name. Like, they've put in a lot of work and a lot of decades of work or whatever.
Right.
But there's some big dogs that no one knows. Like, I have people that walk up into the store and they're like, hey, I really want this. And they'll like drop a bunch of money. And I'm like, yeah. You look like Adam Sandler though. Like, I wasn't good. I didn't expect that. And it always teaches me, okay, don't judge. Like, that's the first thing. But it's like hard when you're like expecting. So it's like the difference between judging and expecting. But I kind of expected something else, and it was like, oh yeah, like sure. And they drop like $2,000 at the shop, and it's like, whoa, okay, how are you? Like, what business do you like? Tell me. But it's like, you can't ask that, But yes, there's some money in the valley that people have no idea about.
It's sneaky too. You're like, you can't judge the guy with the ripped jeans, and the just look oil all over him. You can't judge a guy. He's probably the richest guy in town. Who knows?
It's funny because Bumper Crop Coffee, we were talking to the owner, and I was like, oh, like, we're talking about business. Like, let me go get my picking partner Jordan so he could talk to you. Those two, I think, fell in love with each other. They like talked for 4 hours, and I was like, okay, what are you doing? Like, I need you back in the shop to like help me move this thing, but. It's just one of those things. He's like, he sells that much for, he gets that much from jeans. He just was like puzzling. He's like, I've been farming for how long? And like, that's insane. And it just didn't click. He was just like, yeah, when he walked up, I was like, oh, okay. Cause he was in ripped jeans. He was dirty. And like, we were doing stuff at the shop, and like, that's not what you do. But I always laugh because people are like, well, why sell jeans? Like, what is going on? And I don't have the best like example, because it's like, I worked at the ice rink. I worked as a CNA. I did all these things. Jordan was a petrophysics engineer and quit his job to sell jeans.
That's pretty
like, there's money in this, and people are just like, what? Like, he's not doing that. Yeah, go ask him. He quit his job. Like, he 100% did that for jeans. And we always laugh because he had to have that conversation with his in-laws, like, hey, like, I'll take care of your wife, but like, just trust me, and it's, people don't get the sacrifice that we kind of take from that, because it's a real thing. Like, we don't know where our paycheck's coming from. Like, that's hard.
Right. Yeah. And it's not guaranteed unless you put in the work and you have kind of the passion to actually, go do it. Yeah. It's kind of like anything. I mean, petrochemical engineering, you probably have to have some petrochemical passions. So, but
I don't know. I think he's from Montana, so you just went to the mining school. Like, that's what you do. Right. No, when he talks about that stuff, sometimes I look at him and he's like, "Are you lost?" I'm like, "No, I'm just confused that your brain is that big. Like, I don't get it. Like, what did you say? How did that work?" And then my boyfriend's a mechanic, and he's like, oh my gosh, no, he's not. He's a machinist. I'm sorry. He's a machinist, and he's just like, I understand. I'm like, of course you do. Like, I can't understand you half the time, And it's just like, geez. But yeah, there's passions there, and it cracks me up because I'm like, I don't get it. But sell jeans now. It's fine.
Right. And you mentioned massage therapy school.
Yes.
So you have another business that you mentioned.
Yes.
What's that all about?
So my massage business is called the Zenda Massage, and I've been doing it 5 years. And I studied in Chicago, Illinois for massage therapy. So yeah, it's great passion. I loved it. Everyone asked me, like, you could be quiet for an hour. And I'm like, I can. It's your appointment. Like, sorry. Like, but like a lot of my clients like to talk. But yeah, it's really cool to see the connection of, you know, how all that works and mental health and physical health and how all plays, you know, a part. And people are either really keen into massage or they don't like it. They're like, don't touch me.
Right. I feel like I'm in the don't touch me crowd, but I don't know how many people are actually in that crowd.
It seems like a lot. And I always tell them, I will give you 30 minutes for free because I will change your mind. Like, I just want to make sure that people are going to a correct place that's licensed. There's a big thing in massage that there's some shady stuff going on because it's
right.
There's a bed, like whatever. But I always tell people, I'm like, just reach out to me. I'm like, yeah, I'm booked 6 months out. Like, I get that. I'm hard to get into now, but I will tell you where to go. So don't just go to anybody. Like, you might not go to a good place. And so
there's good people in town as well.
Yes. And my third business is Bellamy Studios, and I share that with Megan Carlton. She just got married, so it was McCracken. But she does lashes and tattoos eyebrows, and she started renting from me at Town Square. We decided to expand, and so now we have 5 massage therapists there, counting myself. We have 3 lash techs, and then she does the brows, and another girl does the brows. So we've expanded a lot, and now we're up on Thane. So it's one of those things that you just have to do. It's like moving the shop. Everyone asks me why, and I'm like, it's what's right, whether it's easy or not. That's what's right. So. But yeah, I'm like, I have someone else in this building even for you to go to. So don't just go fishing around for yourself. Because I hear horror stories or I've gotten propositioned and I'm like, no, leave. Like, just leave.
Disgusting.
Yeah. It's funny because people are like, well, has that ever happened to you? Like they're just like being sassy. I'm like, oh, I get at least 15 calls a week for that.
Oh, Lord.
And people don't get that. People don't get that. Yes.
I don't think it'd be that common. But I've heard of like apps where you can like find. I'm like, well, if the app's downloadable, like the police would. I don't understand why you would try doing that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like we got told in massage therapy school, if I ever find your name on this website, we're gonna have a big talking to. Or if I ever find your name on this, and she was like getting mad. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's insane. And during school, Chicago, so people like different businesses were getting busted weekly over there, and you're like, okay, so like they just come in. I've had a couple undercover come and check me, which that's fun. Like it's my favorite thing, and I always know right away like who they are.
So like kind of secret shoppers.
Yeah, but it's like they're police, like they're FBI or whatever. Like I don't know what rank they are, but like. Yeah, they come in and check us.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's always funny because they're like, I'm a 3rd grade math teacher. And I'm like, dude, you're the Hulk. Like, what do those 3rd graders do? Like, you look so ripped. Like, no.
Just picking up 3rd graders down the other.
Just benching them. Like, yeah.
Get in line. I'm going to put you in your seats.
Yeah. It cracks me up. It's like the funniest thing. They're like, oh, I'm a florist. And I'm like, okay, like right. Sure,
we believe you.
Yes, we're like, okay, cute. Yes, I'll take a dozen roses with your lie. But yeah, it's funny. I always shake everyone's hand, and a lot of that is checking energy because I'm a big energy person. Checking to see if I feel like I could trust them. I don't meet with men or women I don't know after a certain time. There's not everyone's like, oh, men are so disgusting. No, it's both. Like, sorry, we're in this world now. It's both. So don't say that. Like,
when I learned that?
Yeah, I'm like,
I always thought women were just the clean ones and we're the filth. When I had to clean restrooms at my first job, I was like, you know what? Why is the women's room so much worse here? It's
because we all go together. Apparently, like, they're having like business meetings in there. I'm like, get out. Like, I've never understood that. I'm like, I do not go with my friends. Like, that's weird.
But then as you get older, you understand. It's
everyone's gross.
Specific people are terrible. Yes. And
yeah. No, it's funny with the undercovers because, I do shake their hand. I talk to them. I obviously check their body, check their gait. And I'm like, do you shoot? Do you do whatever? Mm-hmm. They're like, no. Like all these things. And you're like.
Do they pay?
Yes.
Okay.
Like they come in like full. You would not know, right? Mm-hmm. And like they pay, they set up their appointment or whatever. Or it's my girlfriend set up the appointment. So like a dude is showing up. But like I knew that in advance. But they show up and they're like, oh yeah, this hurts. And it's like. Okay, that's not even tight on you, but like you can't argue with that because like you're in your body, I'm not. So it's like, okay, yeah, what is going on? But I will always ask certain questions and kind of get there. And then I'm like 15, 20 minutes into the appointment. Usually it's like 10, 15 minutes because I try to make it worth it. And I just say, you don't shoot? Like, are you sure? And the last one was like, no. And I was like, that's so weird because you're a left-handed shooter. And he just like popped up from the table and I was like, do you want a free massage on the bureau? Like what's actually wrong? And he's like, oh my gosh, like my legs and my feet hurt. And I was like, okay, cool. And he goes, can we do a 2 hour? I was like, yes, like, let's go. And so it's always funny to me, but people don't understand. Like I've pulled my gun 3 times on clients. Like I carry while I massage, unless if I know you. And people are like, you do? I'm like, well, yeah, like I'm 5'2". Like I could be taken in a heartbeat. Like I'm not messing around. Right. So yeah, I've had to do that 3 times and it's people don't get it.
No. Well, is there anything else you'd like to cover? How do people get a hold of you to check out your store or like see what's going on at the store? I know I kind of surfed the Facebook page.
Yes.
Something about an arcade game.
Yes. We were having arcade games and it was so well received that we're actually going to bring in more than the one that we said because everyone's like,
cool.
Oh, I'm like, okay, so we'll have a couple in there. We're doing arcade games. So like I said, the grand opening is coming up, and so we've been gearing towards that. Instagram, and it's just Retro on Main, and then same with Facebook. And my, all of my information's on there. It's my number, so I tell people, text me pictures of what you have, stop into the shop. Like I said, I will drop just about anything to meet up and buy stuff. Nice. And that's just the easiest way. And it's nice because people don't realize that they can text me. And so when they say that, they're like, oh, thank you. Like I live in Julietta or something. And so they'll send me pictures of everything they have. And then it's like, okay, I'll take this and this. Like, how can we meet? What do you want to come down? And so it's been a good tool, but it's sometimes hard when you're moving because people are like, you're gone. Sure. It's like, no, literally 2 doors down. Like I didn't even go very far and you guys can't even like find it. I'm like, oh, okay. Right. Need more signs. Yeah. But
we had a big sign out there. Is that one of the reasons you got so many people stopping to sell? Or
no, it was
actually a big one. It was like a 5x5 or something.
Yes. Props to Linda, Jordan's wife. She's like my vinyl queen. I like text her. She's like, okay, done. I'm like, that would take me like a year to do. But it's funny. Caleb at the Storm Cellar, he texts me. He's like, because I buy, and it said I buy every vintage 501 or I buy every 501 or whatever, and I've changed them out. And if I can't buy them or they're not a 501, they're like a 517 or 505 or whatever. They're not the ones I want. I send them straight to him because he pays cash too. And he texted me the other day and he goes, I have never bought so many Levi's in my life. And he's like, that stinking sign. I'm like, I know. It's great. I'm just helping everybody. Like, it's fine. That's pretty funny. That sign has helped everybody.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny because it's huge and I have to like carry it in every night. So a lot of people, when they drive by, they're like, hey, do you need some help? I'm like, no, I'm going to get this sign inside. Like,
just dragging it.
Yeah, it's like, it's not as tall as I am. And I'm like getting it like into the shop. But yeah, that sign has been really helpful for apparently most of Main Street.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, I hope we can get this out. Maybe push some more people your way. Maybe get some people with, grandparents or people that, have barns out there that might want you to poke through and get some retrospective on, maybe grandma had some cool clothes. Maybe grandpa had some cool clothes.
Yeah. It's always cool to watch, people discover it because then they're like, oh, I get to sit and go through everything too.
Right.
Like, it's really fun. Yeah. It's crazy. But I will tell you this one story because I think you'd appreciate it. We were picking in Butte and this little cute old man was with us and he offered us a shot. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. There like, we go. Getting there. Like, he's trying to loosen us up so we spend a lot of money. Got it. Because he was an ivory dealer, and he had certification, so he was like, okay to do it. And, Jordan gets his shot, and I was driving, so I was like, no, I'm okay. He's like, we're going to be here for a while. I was like, okay. So he, like, gives me a shot, and I take my shot, and he's like, look at the bottom of your guys' shot glass, because they were, like, funny, like, nude lady, and, like, mine had an elk on it. And I turn mine over, and, like, chew falls out.
Oh,
and Lord. I was like, cool. And, like, Jordan's like, that was shit. I'm like, shut up. We're not even talking about it. So the boys always give me grief that, like, I'm the one that had to drink chew. And I was like, hey, I got genes, so that's fine. But yeah, you never know what you're going to get into with this. Right. And so that's what's always funny. It's like, okay. I
always check shot glasses for similar reasons. But
yeah. And it was so funny because it's like, he's offering us stuff. It's really all he had. He's being sweet. And it just so happened, like, fate, his niece came into the shop like 2 weeks later, and she was trying to get to the diamond shop. And I directed her to the diamond shop, but I started talking about something, and I was like, I just have this weird feeling. Do you have family in Montana? She's like, yeah, I do. And she, like, said his name. I was like, oh my gosh, I just met him. I was like, weird question. What is the likeliness that I drank chew at his house? Because I was, like, still denying it. She goes, oh, my brother accidentally drank chew at his house all the time. I was like, okay. Cool, thank you for that. So yeah, it was, and she just randomly came in the shop. She had no idea, and I'm like, thank you, I needed that. I'm gonna go to the doctor. And go get checked out. But yeah, it's fun. It's a thrill, and we get questions all the time. Can we go on a pick with you? Like, it's just fun. I think it intrigues people. So
I think it would. Yeah, some people might just do it for fun and just to help out, maybe.
Yeah. It's a big thing around here. Like, people like it, so it's fun, and they like to see the adventure. And we do try to wear GoPros and post as much as we can, but sometimes it's hard because you're like, ooh, I don't like how I looked in there, or I like.
It's work after the fact too.
Yes, and people don't get that. Social media is a lot of work, and
it is.
Influencers now, they're like, oh, just so you know, my full-time job is my phone. Like, it's not running this business, or it's not, and it's like, oh my gosh, when I get to that caliber of it, that's my paycheck. That is scary. So I get why people are like, I don't even want to do social media, or I don't want to do this, but such an asset. But yeah, people like to watch other people do their thing. So it's like, okay, cool. Like, you can watch us pick in a barn if you want to. Like, that's all cool. So yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun.
It's fun. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I had a good time.
It was great. Yeah.
New stuff that people probably haven't heard, and they might have a new appreciation for your business and stop by, and because some people might not know what you guys are all about.
No, a lot of people don't. They just come in, they're like, oh, a thrift store. I'm like, don't say that. It's a vintage store.
Right.
But yeah, it's always good to share my business and like what I do. So yeah.
Well, cheers. We usually end it on cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.